Today, I'm at the MKDons Stadium in Milton Keynes, and I'm actually here for something a little bit special, and that is potentially the world's first fully digital FPV race using HDZero. The stadium here today is hosting the first BDRA event of the season, and it's also hosting a trial of a new technology called 5GVista. In this video, I'm going to walk you guys through a little bit of what's taking place here today, show you some of the technology, as well as show you a little bit of racing as well. So, as I've said, we're here at the MKDons in Milton Keynes. This is a 30,000-seater football stadium, and we've got exclusive access to it for today's race. The lads got in nice and early this morning, and they started putting out the gates, and it wasn't long before we were able to see the layout of the track, and it was looking like it was going to be a very, very interesting day indeed. This race is what I believe to be the first fully digital FPV race held as well, with all pilots flying HDZero. If you don't know what it is a fixed low latency digital FPV system produced by DiviMath. This race is also going to be live streamed online, and you guys are going to be able to watch it on YouTube on the day, but it will also be available to play back later as well. Today's event is not only going to challenge the pilots, it's also going to be difficult for the HDZero system as well. This stadium, whilst it looks pretty to race in, is an absolute nightmare from an RF point of view. We have a metal and concrete stadium which is going to reflect RF everywhere. We have it surrounded by a hotel which has all of its Wi-Fi, and there are access points and power outlets located absolutely everywhere. There was no way to actually shut down the Wi-Fi for today's event, so it's going to be really interesting to see how the HD system holds up overall. Once the track was done, the boys started setting up their work areas, and it was good to see all the different gear that they'd brought with them and all the different choices of equipment. Having had a good walk around, it was clear the goggle of choice at the event was Fat Shark, and the radio was more than often going to be the T16S, but it was nice to see all the different customizations and gimbals that the guys were using too. At the event today, Jamie Cole was the race director, and we even had the fantastic Greg from Menace RC pop in to take a look at what was going on and also offer some help and support for the guys flying as well. Just before we jump in and take a look at the racing, I just want to say a big thank you to the team at Virgin Media and O2 for inviting me along to the event. Also, a massive thank you to the BDRA and specifically Jamie and Serb for all of their dedication and getting the event organised, and I know it wouldn't have been possible without Jamie's support specifically. My goal was to try and document as much as I could, but also talk about it later on and just give my opinion. It was great to be able to be here and experience it myself, and it was also fantastic to meet some other creators such as Chris from Dad's RC Hangar. Anyway, let's get on with it and let's take a closer look at some racing. After each race, there's a quick turnaround with the boys heading onto the field to pick up their quads, and the race director left to pick up the pieces behind them, such as fixing the odd puncher on a gate. Then, as soon as that was done, it was time to get on with the next race. As the day went on, the pilots got used to both their new aircraft as well as the track. It's worth mentioning that many of the guys did not have a chance to actually try their new HDZero builds before the event, and while some had had some time on the simulator, that wasn't the case for everyone, so whilst there was the odd little incident here and there, it didn't take too long before the boys got on top of things. For me, it was also a nice chance to be able to get some nice footage of them flying around the gates, as well as put the camera in the odd interesting position, getting some nice footage as them moving through at speed, as well as putting my DJI action camera under one of the main gates as they was coming through. Whilst I was there, I was also able to get a bit of slow-mo footage of the guys taking off, as well as moving through the gates at speed. The environment for this race was extremely difficult. Whilst the stadium was a fantastic place to have a race, from an RF point of view, it was as bad as it gets. Greg from Menace RC was there to help the guys out, and he was trying different options with different antenna setups, and the pilots also moved location a couple of times, and in the end, as you can see, they were actually able to improve things. This is actually my own footage from my Scout HDs, with me located in a position where I felt it was working really well, and it was nice to see just how good the HDZero system looked once we were able to work around these issues. It is also worth me mentioning that it was only at the very end of the race did people realise how difficult this environment was, because the boys actually put an analog quad in the air after the race had finished, and it was basically unflyable from the information they said. This just shows how well the HDZero system does, and whilst you can see breakup, that is entirely due to the environment rather than the system. The boys have just finished a race. They're just swapping aircraft over now. I'm going to walk you through to show you some of the setup that we've got here. We've got some amazing people here today, and it's been amazing to meet so many guys who are just so passionate about FPV, but also drone racing, and so much. We're learning so much about HDZero as well in this environment. We really are. You can now see we've got the boys setting up here. We've got their the tables, the campsite as you call it. We've got the guys doing the commentary over here. The lads have just finished a race. They're just messing with their quads. There's some troublemakers over there. We won't talk about them. We'll head over this way. You'll notice the fantastic Mr. Menace RC himself and troublemaker, the race director who's keeping everything in order. And overall, guys, it's been an amazing day. It really has. Just taking a closer look at some of the aircraft, we've got here the HDZero version of the Switchback. You can see that they've got the race version 2 VTX located in the top. It's all tight, but it does go in, no issues at all. Obviously, we've got a capacitor off the back there. This one's success. And it's all set up and ready to rock and roll, but you can see that you can integrate that HDZero into it, no problem at all, and it's got the wider front end on this to allow for that camera, which is good, and obviously he's got the 3D printed mount on this one to help protect it, because it does have the sticking out lens. Another cool one we got here is this little frame from Halo RC, and it's called the Odin. It's another HDZero build. It weighs under 200 grams with the battery on board as well, and it really is amazing just to see how tight the guys have been able to pack in the system into this, and again, a full digital system nonetheless. As the day went on, the boys got more used to the track and got used to where the system behaved the best, and the racing got closer too. I have to say, I really enjoyed being there, and racing is something that is best to experience in person, because not only do you see it with your own eyes, but you can actually experience the sound as well. Now, it wouldn't be racing without the odd incident, and this day didn't disappoint. The lads did bin it here and there, but we didn't have any major incidents other than the odd broken arm. Now, sadly, I couldn't stay to the end, but the racing did finish successfully, and David Owens, who was the main organiser behind this event and the person who invited me, did hand out the awards, and he sent me some pictures over for you guys to see. I do believe everyone thoroughly enjoyed themselves on the day, and whilst it was a challenging environment for the system, it was a very cool place to have a race, and for me, it was one of those things I wish I could do on a daily basis, and I'm going to make sure I go to a lot more races this year as the season progresses. Now, as I mentioned at the start, this event was not just about the drone race. It was also a showcase of the 5GVista project. If you don't know what this is, it is a government-supported project as part of the 5G Create competition to improve how we experience live sports and events in stadiums. This is a project that aims to allow us to do new things with our smart devices, such as get closer to the action via live sports via the app, and it's going to be something you're probably going to hear a lot more about in the future. It's supported by a number of the big providers such as O2 and Virgin Media, and if you'd like to find out more about it, there is a link to the 5GVista project in the description of this video. So it's almost a week later, and I've just finished that first bit of edit that you've just seen, and I just want to add some stuff before we finish this video up, and I will leave you then with one last race. Again, I want to say a massive thank you to David Owens for inviting me down, who was hosting the event and arranged it. Massive thank you to Jamie, the race director, all of the pilots, Martin, everyone else. I can't remember everyone's name, but you all made me feel so welcome. It was great to have a sit down, a chat, have a beer, and just talk to some like-minded people the night before as well. Then watch the racing the following day. Now, that place was frankly so difficult for the HDZero system. I'm really impressed how well it actually did. I know there's been some comments around the live stream quality as the event was live, and that was improved as the day went on. There are a number of factors here, because the pilots were flying their own FPV goggles, you had the streaming setup, and then you had a second HDZero setup, which was for the 5GVista system too. So there was actually 3 different setups in 3 different places. Each pilot had his own goggles and module, and they were moving around a little bit to see where they could get the best possible signal. You had the streaming setup that was fixed, but Greg at Menace RC did add some antennas which did improve things. All of that metal and concrete made for a really difficult environment alone, and then you throw on top the Wi-Fi. And again, I just want to stress, there was Wi-Fi everywhere, access points everywhere. The hotel was part of the stadium, you couldn't turn it off. So at the end of the day, the guys did the best they could do. As you have seen from some of the footage I got on my Scout HDs, and you'll see at the end, overall, depending on where you were, the image quality was really good. HDZero, from a racing point of view, having spoke to a number of the pilots, it's interesting to get their feedback, and I think some are really interested in seeing how it goes. Some maybe not so much, and they're not necessarily seeing the benefits yet, but I think most of the guys want to wait to see how it is when they move into more traditional environments, because again, that stadium is not a typical FPV environment, and whilst it's a great place to host an event and race, it does come with its challenges. What I will say on it is, I think the HDZero personally did very, very well. When the guys at the end, after I left, flown their analog quad, they said it was basically impossible to fly. They would not have been able to race with that, and that just shows how bad the environment was for the system. For me, I did move around the place a little bit, and I found the best area was actually around the left-hand corner, where I was getting the image quality much better. A couple of pilots did move around to there towards the end of the racing. Some found it better, some didn't. But there are so many different variables here. On the day, the guys tried many things. For instance, they tried it with the extra antennas on the top, and then we found taking them off and using just the patches actually helped to reduce the reflections, and that actually helped with the system too. Then some of them added the Menace RC directional patch antennas on, and that improved things a bit more. The sort of order of things a couple of the pilots said was it was better without the Omnis, and it was better again with the directional patches. They were using the HDZero goggles module, which has smaller patches than these. For me, I was running the Singularity and the Menace RC Pagoda, and that's the setup that I was using on the day. But it is also worth mentioning that all of these quads have a somewhat compromised antenna setup as well. Whilst you do have that antenna mounted on the back, it's not like having this or that much space like you've got on here. The antennas are very much down to the level of the frame, so there are always compromises in a racing setup compared to a traditional FPV setup that may have an effect on the RF. It was also interesting that they actually tried the higher power output, which is 200 milliwatts. They had legal permission in advance to be able to do that because the event was part of this wider test, but that made things worse. It didn't actually help, and that was partly, we believe, because so many pilots, more reflections, so less power was the way forward, not more. And in the end, the real conclusions was less power, more directional antennas, trying to keep as far away from the stadium as you could. Ideally, what you'd have wanted to do is sit in the grass at the other side of the stadium and not under the metalwork. However, there was rain due, and that wasn't a realistic option for the streaming setup or the pilots on the day. And whilst the pilots did really get down close to the front a few times, they didn't find it made a dramatic difference. The environment was what the environment was, and it seemed to be where you were made a difference compared to how close you were more than anything. The streaming setup was fixed, so that couldn't be moved, and it did get improved with those directional antennas, but again, it was somewhat compromised by the environment around it. But once Greg got the antennas on, things improved massively. For me, what I think I took away from the day was just how well HDZero did. I think the footage, which you've seen, hopefully looks really good. I'm more than happy with it. I think it's definitely the way forward. I think really what's interesting now is how pilots choose to adopt this or not. And I suppose the biggest question for pilots is, what is the benefit of digital over analog in a traditional race? And I think 2022 is the year that will become clear. I don't think it's 100% clear today, but I do think in 2022, as more people race with HDZero, you will see the true benefits come. What it can't do is offer downsides, and at the moment I'm not really seeing any. And again, I actually think that race would not have gone ahead with analog based on what the feedback was afterwards. But it's easy up front to look at it and go, well, that doesn't look very good. Unfortunately, there was no comparison in place to be able to show you guys the difference between the two systems. But from my point of view, I will tell you how it is, and I can tell you now that the HDZero system did very, very well. It just remains to be seen, I think, for pilots themselves of what the straight benefit of digital is over analog. And I think it's a bit like HD TV, that there were many people who bought a big HD TV and got HD everything and sort of went, I can't see the difference. And there are other people that went, oh my God, it's night and day. So it is always going to be subjective. I don't think digital FPV is going to completely replace analog, but I think there are pilots who will find it beneficial and they'll move over to it. Just like I think there are pilots that find 500 hertz beneficial compared to the pilots who find it no different at all on the RC side of things. So it is going to be a subjective thing. It's also going to be good when we have proper new VRXs come for HDZero, because here and now you've either got the Scouts, which I'm using, or the goggles module. There is no tidy race system at the moment, in the sense of HDZero are working on a dedicated system which is going to have analog and digital receivers built in, dual antennas as I understand it, 4 receivers, dual antennas, and that's going to be really interesting to see as well. And hopefully that will improve things not only for the guys at the event but spectating at the event, but also the guys watching remotely, because I think HD FPV biggest benefit may not actually be the pilots. It may be for spectators. But that remains to be seen, and that's just an opinion I have. In the end, I have to say I thoroughly enjoyed it. Now, if you're interested in seeing more from the day, including interviews from the pilots and an interview with Greg from NSRC, please do check out Chris's YouTube channel, which is called Dad's RC Hangar. I'd met Chris for the first time on the day. He's a fantastic guy. He's got a really good YouTube channel. There's a link to it in the description. Please do go check out his content from the event, but please do give him a like and subscribe as well, because he's got a great channel there and he's showing some really interesting content around his journey with planes and FPV, and I think you guys will find it interesting, so please do give him your support. Finally, as I've said, I want to say a massive thank you to everyone I met. I can't remember everyone's name. Martin, everyone else, you guys were amazing. Thank you for the warm welcome. David, again, massive thank you from me. If you found this interesting, please do consider hitting the subscribe button. Don't forget to hit the little bell next to it as well. If you'd like to support the channel, there are links to my Patreon as well as buy me a coffee in the description too.